The war is intended to start, as of now, with an operation coming out of Iran. And it will probably be set up in some form. This war in Iran is, targeting Iran, is supposed to bring Israel into play. That may or may not happen, but that is the option with which this war plan started. The issue is as follows. The present world system, economic system, is in a process of disintegrating. Exactly how that will occur is uncertain, but it is happening. The intention is to eliminate two nations, Russia and China. And this means nuclear weapons, it means thermonuclear weapons. That part is engaged. Once the war starts, probably with an incident orchestrated in Iran or against Iran or something of that sort, then Israel will come into play as starting the heavy fire, but on a limited way. Israel coming into the fire will trigger a setup of thermonuclear World War III, in which the intended targets include Russia and China. Now, at this point, the United States, nations of Europe, Russia, China, and other countries are poised for exactly this war. The background of the war is the fact that the entire world is going bankrupt, especially the transatlantic region, especially Europe, and also the United States and the nations of South America and elsewhere as well. This war has been on the way since the beginning of President Obama's illegal war in Libya. This Libyan war was intended to set up the trigger for launching the larger war, which would be normally involve nations such as Syria and other nations around there. But then it would bring in, with the attack on Iran and the attack on Syria, would bring into play Russia, because Russia would be then a major target. And Russia is prepared for this. Russia is the leading nuclear power, together with China, on the other side. The major capability of conducting this war depends upon the nuclear capabilities and related capabilities of the United States. European nations such as Britain and so forth are nuclear powers, but they don't have the depth of nuclear weaponry that we in the United States have. And therefore the heavy burden of launching a nuclear war, or a thermonuclear war actually, depends upon the capabilities of the United States. And we, of course, have the naval forces of the United States in the Eastern Mediterranean and also in the Persian Gulf area now, staged to actually unleash a thermonuclear capability against the targeted enemies for this attack, which are Russia and also China, but other targets as well. So this will be essentially, if it goes, a worldwide thermonuclear war, in which the U.S. thermonuclear capabilities are a crucial factor. That means that if President Obama were to be removed from office on grounds of his known insanity, under Section 4 of the 25th Amendment of the Federal Constitution, if he were eliminated from that, the war would be off. If he remains in office, it is probable that the war, the thermonuclear war, will occur. That's the general situation.
The Third World War must be fomented by taking advantage of the differences caused by the agentur of the Illuminati between the political Zionists and the leaders of the Islamic world. The war must be conducted in such a way that Islam, the modern Arabic world, the Muslim world, and political Zionism, the State of Israel, mutually destroy each other. Meanwhile, other nations, once more divided on this issue, will be constrained to fight to the point of complete physical, moral, spiritual, and economic exhaustion. We shall unleash the nihilists and the atheists, and we shall provoke a formidable social cataclysm, which in all its horror will show clearly to the nations the effect of absolute atheism, origin of savagery, and of the revolutionaries in most bloody turmoil. And then everywhere the citizens obliged to defend themselves against the world minority of revolutionaries will exterminate those destroyers of civilization, and the multitude disillusioned with Christianity, whose deistic spirits will from that moment be without compass or direction, anxious for an ideal but without knowing where to render its adoration, will receive the true light through the universal manifestation of the pure doctrine of Lucifer, brought finally out into the public view. This manifestation will result from the general reactionary movement which will follow the destruction of Christianity and atheism, both conquered and exterminated at the same time. End quote. Now this is a long time ago, 1871. So the terrorist attacks of September 11, 2001, world events, and in particular in the Middle East, show a growing unrest and clear instability between modern Zionism and the Arabic world, as David just mentioned. And Pike calls it the Third World War. No question about it.
There is another seer whose chilling predictions continue to echo down the centuries. He is Saint Malachi, canonized in 1190. Malachi was a reforming Catholic prelate born in Armagh in 1094. On a visit to Rome, he was struck by a vision. Before him appeared a series of Latin phrases identifying the 111 popes who would rule the Catholic Church until the end of time.
He uttered 111 Latin mottos, which are supposed to represent the nature, the name or destiny, or the coat of arms of every pope until Judgment Day.
Many of the phrases are considered too precise to be the results of chance. John the 23rd, the 107th pope in the prophecy, is referred to as Pastor et Nortam, priest and sailor. Before becoming pope in 1958, he was the Patriarch of Venice. Paul VI is Flos Floram, flower among flowers. His coat of arms is a lily among lilies.
John Paul II, who is called De Labora Solis in the Prophecies, which means the sun's eclipse, the sun's labor. He is the only pontiff on the list that was born on an eclipse and later entombed during an eclipse.
And the 111th, the final pope in the prophecy?
The Gloria Olivae, from the glory of the olive. That's the current Benedict XVI.
At the end of the list, Malachi is said to have uttered a final doom-laden phrase, this one unnumbered.
During the final persecution, the seat of the Holy Roman Church will be occupied by Peter the Roman, who will feed the sheep in many tribulations, after which the seven-hilled city will be destroyed, and the terrible judge will judge his people. The end.
Is Malachi describing the end of the Catholic Church, or the end of the world? Is Peter the Roman the last pope who will follow the current pontiff, Benedict XVI? Some experts consider that since the motto is unnumbered, they are actually one and the same.
I almost lost my point. Peter the Roman, according to the prophecy of the popes, will assume authority during a time of great tribulation, and then the prophecy of the pope says the city of seven hills will be destroyed, and the terrible and fearsome judge will judge his people. So you have an almost 900-year-old Catholic prophecy that sounds very similar to a 700-year-old Jewish prophecy talking about how the time of Jacob's trouble is going to come, and there's going to be this relationship between a final pope and the Antichrist. Of course, the Zohar says this is when their Messiah is coming, But in Christianity, at least in evangelical Christianity, we accept that because the Orthodox Jews rejected Jesus Christ as the Messiah, they're still looking for a Messiah, and for a while they're going to accept as Messiah the person that we would call the Antichrist.
That's right. It's an interesting relationship there to it. And by the way, another thing, a Petrus Romanus or Romanus would at this stage then not be, we wouldn't be able to identify if there is such a man with this name, because they changed the names, correct? So there is no, I mean, the Pope Benedict XVI, he was Cardinal Ratzinger before, and he took this name. So we could be looking at a situation where he steps off, he has some health issue, what have you, and a new Pope steps in that takes his name, correct?
Yeah, that's exactly right. That takes a new name or takes his name, and that the idea is, because if you look at the prophecy of the popes, he did not name them by name. He named them by things that would indicate who they were.
Okay.
Like the glory of the olive, and of course Benedict XVI coming from the Olivet order. So, and in that sense, these prophecies have been uncannily accurate. And so Peter the Roman might mean something else that we might not even understand until after the fact. But there could be a Christianized name that would fulfill the meaning behind Petrus Romanus or Peter the Roman. Now, having said that, we have identified two individuals, and we are narrowing it down to one, and there is a monstrous amount of conspiracy around this. Information that is going to come from the cardinals themselves that identify even by name this individual, Peter the Roman. And so we're not saying anything about it yet publicly, because, you know, you want to make sure you do a lot of fact-checking in this kind of thing. And but I wished I could talk to you about it right now. I will after the first of the year sometime.
Okay, yeah.
Because some of this is absolutely going to blow people's minds.
Wow. There's something I was thinking about in terms of the popes, because if we do have a crowning, if you will, then I don't know what they call it, of a new pope, then that would be a potential reason why we would have these so-called kings, or, you know, this will be politicians, you know, high up leaders, and of course even kings of a European monarchy, etc., in Rome at that particular time. So that's another interesting aspect to this.
Yeah, that's right. And if Malachi is correct, they're going to get a big surprise when they get there.
That's right, exactly. So that's something to keep an eye on, obviously, and we'll continue to unfold this, because what you've been talking about here is various symbols kind of related to the prophecies around 2012. And why don't we begin to tie in the aspect of what is found on the Great Seal at this point as well, then, because this is another big one. And obviously later I want to ask you about if they're in the know about all of this, that this could be obviously kind of a program that is playing out as well, a contextual message, if you will, on an occult level, and therefore we're seeing these prophecies being fulfilled. It's either or, I feel. Either it's really happening because the prophecies about them are real, and it's a supernatural, you know, event that's taking place, or we have an occult elite, Tom, that knows about this, because if they have the knowledge to incorporate this in the Great Seal, for instance, they're going to play on this, or aren't they going to do that? They're going to play this out, basically.
Yeah, and you know, actually, Henrik, that's kind of what I went back and forth. If you read the book Apollyon Rising 2012, I actually juggle those two issues. My biggest question, of course, my motivator was, there seems to be something unusual here. Why were there disparate societies over thousands of years, separated by time and distance, many of whom we have no historical evidence that they had any capacity for communicating with one another, and yet they were all focused on the year 2012 with these redundancies. It's going to be a time of great trial. It's going to be a time at the end of the procession of the equinox. It's going to be coupled with these return of these dragons, or a dragon. in the air, a dragon that has the power of flight. It's going to give birth to a messianic figure upon the earth, who we might think of as the Antichrist. And of course, with Petrus Romanus, it's going to also perhaps provide the book of Revelation's false prophet. But then, following all this chaos and tribulation, there is going to be the emergence of a new form of humanity upon the earth, and all of the government documents